Welcome to the Wits and Weights podcast for busy professionals who want to get strong and healthy with strength training and sustainable diet. I'm your host, Philip Pape, and in each episode, we'll examine strategies to help you achieve physical self-mastery through a healthy skepticism of the fitness industry and a commitment to consistent lifting and nutrition. Welcome to episode 19 of Wits and Weights. Today we have another special interview guest. Ken Caputo is a lifelong athlete who eventually found his way to strength training in his late 30s, and that's something he and I have in common. From an early age, he competed in swimming, track, cross country, even pole vaulting and springboard diving at the University of Connecticut, eventually becoming an expert in martial arts. I invited Ken on today because of his passion for lifting and nutrition and how they can keep someone healthy physically, mentally, and emotionally, as well as recover from injury. Ken Caputo, thanks for joining me on the show.
Glad to be here.
You've been an athlete since you were a teenager, and you've dabbled recreationally and competitively in probably more sports than I've ever even thought of. Tell us more about your fitness background and your current approach to training and nutrition.
Yeah, so I think I would say I became an athlete, in my mid-teens, like around high school age. Prior to that, I was the skinny kid who couldn't, I did little league and stuff like that, but did all of it poorly. And, okay. I became attracted to more like endurance activities. So running, I did really well with swimming, and body control stuff. And I found that it was a joy. It was like, I think the main thing, especially younger, was it was a way to decompress, relieve stressors that, all the teenagers are feeling. I think the hormonal highs, especially from endurance activities, was something I became kind of addicted to. So that really was the start and I think the other thing that attracted me to these kind of individual physical activities in sports was really just you against the clock, and it was just kind of, this time, time where you're testing yourself, and, that kind of fit my personality and style early on, I think.
Now, were you encouraged to do this, or did you find it on your own? You say you're a little skinny kid, because I was like the little fat kid who stayed out of sports when I was young. So you'd have to, pay me to do it. So, how did you get into it that way?
So it's kind of funny because my dad he was like a big time football, baseball, okay. He was into more of the traditional kind of team sports, and he always really encouraged us to do those things. So I tried them all, and I was just terrible. Just wasn't good at any of them. And
you knew liked something physical, just not those sports.
Yeah. And I really just, I remember just as a 12, 13-year-old, pretty much just reading a lot of books and hiding in the basement, and just kind of, nothing was working out that way. And it was a good friend of mine in high school who had joined up on the swim team to become a springboard diver. And he was like, "You want to try?" I said, I knew nothing about diving, and neither did the coach, honestly. I mean, this was like a high school team. There was a board there. So it was me and him, and they literally showed us this 8mm reel of the required dives that they pulled. That was your training. It was like, you ever see dodgeball?
Sure, yeah.
It's like that kind of thing,
Now, is this the springboard? So versus I don't know what you call the other one doesn't spring, but is this very high, or is it pretty close to the water?
It's pretty close. It's a 1 meter. So at the high school level, It's all 1 meter. Once you get into the collegiate level, there is no 1 meter. It's 3 meter. And then especially as you get into the higher levels, you've got platform, usually a 5 meter and 10 meter platform.
Got it.
So, so starting out it was 1 meter, and, and I loved it. And as I got into it, I also started swimming, because you could do both. So you could compete. So I started competing in 100 free and breast and stuff like that. And so this was my freshman year of high school. And what happened was that spring, they were looking for pole vaulters. And the track coach said, "Hey, you divers, you're these skinny, light guys who have good body control. Why don't you try out for the track team and see if you can pole vault?"
Okay. All right. I was going to say, sounds like a totally random sport, but you've got some prerequisites there.
Yeah, exactly. And I'd actually tried out for track when I was in junior high and got cut because I didn't know what I was doing. I couldn't run. I was just not athletic. So anyway, so I tried pole vaulting and again, as part of that, decided to try running again and got hooked on the 3,200, which is basically 2 miles on the track. And that fall, I did cross country, continued to swim, dive, and became a 3-sport athlete right through all of high school. And then that carried over University of Connecticut. I was actually recruited to be U4 track, but didn't get enough money to actually go there. So I walked on to the swim team at UConn and made it as a diver and dove for a couple of years there.
That's pretty cool. What were you at UConn for? What was your major?
Actually, I went in for psychology.
Okay.
And ended up just not doing well. I was doing a bunch of stuff. I was, kind of working my way through. I actually joined the National Guard to pay my tuition. So I was doing that once a month,
cool.
Doing an Army infantryman type thing. And eventually just kind of ran out of money and motivation for the whole college thing. So, so I left campus. I was still doing some classes part-time, working nights, and was looking for something physical to do because at this point I understood the value of physical activity and just was looking for something that would kind of hit that body control part, but also something that would bring in a little bit more of I guess you would say a mindfulness, although I didn't really have those words at that time. So another friend said, "Hey, there's a karate school in town. You should check it out." Okay. So I went in, so this is us probably around 20 at the time. And went in, tried a class, fell in love with it. And about a year later, realized that I loved it so much. I actually came in a little early and saw them working with kids. And I was thinking, oh my God, I could see myself doing this with my life. It's healthy for me. I could really transform a lot of lives. So I started teaching, volunteering my time, and eventually took over a school that was failing and ran that. It's still going strong 30 plus years later. So
wow, that's amazing how opportunities come out of nowhere, right?
You're
seeking that kind of individualistic pursuit, right? Of something that would channel your energy. So It wasn't even for self-defense or anything like that, which is probably why I would think to take martial arts. And then you fell into it, found that you could teach kids. And that was another passion of yours, kind of combining the two.
Yeah. And I had actually, because of the swimming, I had been a lifeguard through high school. That was kind of my job. And I taught swim lessons and loved teaching the kids. So that kind of came back bubbling out to the surface when I saw this opportunity with the martial arts, and it all just kind of came together. And, so I started doing it professionally and really dug into that and competed in tournaments. And, I was teaching 6 days a week and, really just became a lifestyle.
That's pretty cool. My only foray into karate, well, there's two. First is I tried it as a kid and I was too scared to actually go up in front of everybody for the first demonstration. And I told my parents, I don't want to do this. And then the second is my love for Cobra Kai, which I know is completely realistic. The show on Netflix, right? And that's about
so
it.
much fun to watch.
It's hilarious. It's very entertaining, tongue in cheek and all that, especially if you grew up around that time. But so I understand you've taught. So this is Shaolin Kempo is the style that from your eval. Hopefully I pronounced that right. And you're a 7th degree black belt. And again, I don't know anything about martial arts in general. So why that style? What excites you about it? Hey, listeners, this is Philip Pape, and I'm excited to announce our upcoming totally free 21-day challenge starting December 1st. It's called the Wits and Weights No Diet Holiday Body Recomp Challenge. This challenge is about learning how to achieve body recomposition. That's building muscle and losing fat at the same time without dieting or restriction throughout the holidays. I'll be giving you free videos, guides, and personalized coaching in a private group chat to help you enjoy the holidays while being satisfied and guilt-free. The kickoff call is Friday, November 17, and the link to enroll is in the show notes. no matter what episode you are listening to. Don't worry, if you're hearing this after November 17, you can still register and get access to the replay and resources before the challenge starts on December 1st. Again, to join the Wits and Weights No Diet Holiday Body Recomp Challenge to build muscle and lose fat without dieting through the holidays, click the link in my show notes. Now back to the episode.
It was really the first one that I stepped into. And, and what I tell people all the time, there are so many different styles, and it really just comes down to, does the way the system is set up complement the way that you kind of move? And does it feel good to you? And more importantly, do you like the environment? Do you like the teachers? Do you like the students that are with you? It's really a community. So as long as those things, the actual name of the style or the specific of the style never really seemed as relevant. They all have advantages and disadvantages. Like you said, I was more interested in being a balanced human. So I wasn't really into it for like a combat type of, hardcore. I wasn't interested in, and it wasn't. And, and if I was, I probably would have picked a different style. Although there's, the style I'm in is very, there's obviously self-defense application. There always is. But what it's really about is living a long, healthy life, and that was what really appealed to me, not only for myself, but teaching that, to communities. And, here I am I've literally trained multiple generations, so watch kids become parents and have kids and, live healthy, abundant lives with, this martial arts system being kind of part of that, part of that experience. For them.
Yeah. And I think you hit on the community aspect. I think that's attracted a lot of people to all sorts of pursuits, right? CrossFit is a big one I can think of that took off 15 years ago. You also mentioned longevity and health, and I want to get into some of that with this discussion because, sometimes goals are contradictory, right? There's the performance goals, there's strength goals, longevity and health. They don't always, align perfectly. If you're trying to, build a physique and you need to cut body fat and, be hungry and suffer through all that, and you're messing with your hormones and so on, that doesn't necessarily translate to living to 110, if that's what you meant by long, but you get the point. So, what's your take on balance, I guess?
Yeah, it's really an interesting thing. And the funny part, I trained as a lifelong athlete. It was pretty well balanced just because I wasn't looking to be like some crazy, MMA fighter where I was taking a lot of hits, like even competed in tournaments, but this is what's called point fighting. So there's contact, but it's like tag, when someone like hits you, everything stops and you're accumulating 5 points and then you advance. So you take some shots, but it's not the sheer abuse that like an MMA fighter or a boxer, they're like taking such a pounding. So I didn't have that element. What was interesting is, by the time I was in my mid 30s, I had reached a rank in the system that I was training where you really couldn't compete anymore. So I started racing mountain bikes. And you
had the bug and you had to itch it somehow, right?
I've always needed to do something competitive, and this was cross country. So, so you start off as a beginner and, it's like maybe like a 45-minute, race. And by the time you reach back then, what was the expert level, what's now Cat 1, these are 2 3-hour races. So they're very demanding, doing point series. So you're talking 14 races between like April and October. So that's where you start seeing what you're talking about, like balancing that level of training and conditioning against the demands of the sport can really throw you out of whack. And I remember very vividly when I first started racing, I got like blown out my first year. I did terrible. And it was just part of the learning curve. Led to a lot of nutritional insights we can talk about. But there were posters up for dealing with depression. And a lot of these racers were pushing themselves so hard physically, logging so many hours to be competitive that it was creating damage emotionally, not enough time committed to their relationships. So I learned a lot about that. And really, my goal was doing this because the best way for me to stay healthy was to have some kind of a physical event to train for in a cyclical way. So, and that's when I started really thinking about, all right, what's the best way to be efficient and to be smart so that I feel in balance. I'm not like getting moody or, eating things that are leaving me all doubled over and cramped up after a race or impacting my business. I mean, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a business owner. So I had to invest all of that. So I learned, I think, more from the mountain biking experience. I did that for about a decade than I did from anything I had done previously to that,
Yeah. So it sounds like what you're talking about is the need for periodization, the need for, I guess, seasons in your training and your competition.
Absolutely.
I mean, CrossFitters learned this over the years with the Open and the Games, where the organization, I guess, added more and more competitions, and the top ranked guys wanted to compete all year, and they found they couldn't do it. And, because you get overtrained, you get over fatigued, and you really need to peak for that, right? You need to have a building phase, you have to have an off season, et cetera. And it sounds like what you're talking about. Now, could these bikers just skip a bunch of competitions and choose the ones they wanted, or did they have to compete in all of these?
It depended. So, for those of us that were into it from a point series perspective, it was, you could miss one race, which usually was going to be a DNF. Like you went to race and something broke on your bike, or you crashed and broke yourself and
involuntarily,
that kind of thing. Yeah. But you had to, the ones that would win, and I won states, I won New England. So I took it as high as I could go at the expert level. And it was really attrition. It was who could race consistently, pretty much top 5 race after race after race through the whole series. So it was very challenging because you really couldn't, and you found yourself like during the training season, balancing like your main physical effort was the race. And then everything else was kind of recovery, maintaining fitness so that, you could sustain it. And what's interesting is there's this, and you see this a lot in athletics, there's this kind of tough guy culture. One of the things we used to say is, the one who breaks last wins, the one who could, and cycling is sustained pain, like, mountain biking, especially because it's very anaerobic and aerobic. So, you're going up Mount Snow with your heart rate at 185 for 15 minutes, and then you're exhausted and trying to traverse and go back down and do it again. So, so you almost didn't recognize how important it was to take care of yourself and focus on recovery, because the tough guy would just take it, and not break. And of course we would all break. Right? It really was. Yeah.
Wow. That's cool. So we touched on balance and periodization. Then that brings me to, I know you're doing OCRs now, but you also do strength training, and that's my passion, right? You came into that, I guess, in your 30s, sort of similar timeframe that I did. I guess my question is, how did you fall into lifting?
So it's really interesting. So with the cycling, one of the things, especially road cyclists, they'll tend to, there's mass amounts of cardiovascular fitness, and they're, your legs just get huge, but your upper body on a mountain bike, you need a lot of upper body strength, but it's hard to actually work that on the bike. It's to actually get like kind of balanced musculature. And I was also starting to, there's a lot more research. I had, when I first started racing, I was just pumping calories, 5,000-6,000 calories a day. And I'm doing it with eating anything, hot dogs, ice cream, whatever I could. I didn't know,
Yeah.
So and then I'm like, so I'm starting to get like cramps, and so I started studying nutrition and started learning about, how it's not just the calories, it's the macronutrients, the types of foods, all that started coming into play. And that led me to understanding a little bit more about body composition and the value of maintaining muscle mass, not only for just strength competitively, but overall health and longevity.
Sure.
And at this point, this is like almost 20 years ago. So the research wasn't even really that strong. Like now,
that was like the early bro science phase still.
Yeah. And I was really kind of turned off by the idea of muscle building, like bulking up, because as a martial artist, it was all about everything being balanced and functional strength. So, I mean, when I was fighting, I weighed 150 pounds, and it was about hitting like you weigh 250 pounds through structure, not necessarily just being big. So I had I was misinformed about what resistance training could actually do for you. And as I started researching it, I was like, okay, now this is starting to make sense. And I recognized that I had worked a lot on the other cornerstones of fitness. There's like 5 things that I think about: conditioning, flexibility, which you do a lot in martial arts; stability, which you do a lot in martial arts. There's just so much balance; and mobility, movement. But what I missed was strength.
Sure.
And
which you could argue could bring all these other things up another level.
Exactly what happened. So I found that I just had, I was doing a lot of not upper body, just like body weight strength training. Always had tons of push-ups, pull-ups, just explosive movements with the body, but not adding in actual weights. And when I started adding in the weights, all of a sudden, like, it was kind of scary, like how much more energy I had. I started hitting like a lot harder. I was moving more explosively when I was training in the arts. My ability to perform my mountain bike racing got better. It just brought everything together. It was like the glue that brought all these different things together.
I'm not surprised at all. What I'm curious about is what style or what focus of strength training that you found most effective. Was it the big compound lifts, or was it just adding weight to anything, or what was it?
It's kind of funny. I think I just started reading books on it. And there are a few good ones that I think there's one, Body for Life, early on, and there are a few like that. And so I was just kind of learning about how to lift and, the difference between low rep, high rep, figuring out what your one lift max was, and just the basics, bench press, deadlift, squat, that kind of stuff. But I actually found this guy, he's probably still around. His name is Shin Otaki.
Okay.
And he was big on understanding how to do compound movements. And he was like doing a lot more of like the Olympic lifts, like cleans and, that kind of stuff. But all with dumbbells. So I really got kind of fascinated by that. And it made a lot of sense as far as working through kinetic chains of movement, like you do in martial arts.
Get the more bilateral.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and there was and also the core stabilization. So I felt like it was causing me to use my body the way I trained it to work for 2 decades, and all these other things I did. So I kind of started digging into his stuff for a while. And then a few years after that, I think it was when, Jeff Cavalier showed up on the scene with YouTube, and he just really made, Athlete X. Yeah. And that's what I use to this day. I just use various of his programs because I like the way he kind of, he varies it up. He sets you up on, a training regimen that's not too time intensive, but, doesn't leave any gaps. It's smart and intelligent. And now I just kind of cycle through a bunch of his different programs. And, that's what I found has been most effective for me.
All right. Pretty cool. I mean, that's really cool. I like, you came through with the compound lifts and also the dumbbells. I mean, I've heard it said that if you had no problem lifting any weight dumbbell, it would be the most effective, implement. But when you get heavy enough, you just can't wield them. They're just too unwieldy. Right. And that's why you tend to use both if you have the training volume and you have the time. But consistency, right? Wouldn't you say? Like, I know a lot of folks, they can pick a fairly mediocre program. I'm not saying Cavalier's program is that, but you could pick one, and as long as you're consistent, you're going to be in the top 90% of people in terms of your progress.
Yeah. No. When people ask me, I mean, I'm always very clear. There's a difference between, like, I'm choosing to live my life for as long as I possibly can as a high performing athlete. And obviously what high performing is relative to, the event, the time I put in, age, all those other things as they just naturally occur. But for most people, tell them, look, I mean, just if you stress the muscles, 2-3 times a week. It's all good for you. So find something you can do safely and smart that you can commit to and enjoy. And,
Absolutely.
And if it's just body weight and you just want to pull up bar and do push-ups and, that's going to be what it is. It's definitely better than nothing. And you may find that over time, as you get stronger, you get curious.
Sure.
And, and now
I want to push
finally
myself
do sign up for the gym and get a couple personals and, learn a few things about how to lift safely and smart and that kind of thing. But yeah, I just tell people, look, it's just the act of strength training on a regular basis, like you said, consistently is going to have a tremendous impact on your overall health and wellness over time, period.
Yep. Totally agree. Preaching to the choir on that,
Yeah. Yep.
And it's funny. I don't know if, let's see, did it come out? Yeah. I did an episode on injury that just came out. And then you had mentioned that you suffered at a grade 3 AC tear, blew out 3 ligaments, but strength, you had gotten stronger up to that point, and you believe that helped you through or helped the recovery process versus if you hadn't.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. So that happened in 2015 on Thanksgiving morning. So we're talking, almost 7 years ago now.
Turkey and everything. Yeah.
This was, so basically that morning before going to do all the family stuff, I just went for a run. I was just doing a trail run with my golden retriever. So I had her on my leash and, we ran this trail. It was very clear and everything, just kind of like a gravel road bed. So, so I was doing some sprints and she saw whatever squirrel type thing cut across my legs. So I went over the top, which was fine. One of the things I'm really good at is rolling out. I've gone over the type of bicycles and all that kind of stuff. But she pulled the leash tight exactly when I was upside down. And I came down on the top of my right shoulder. The ortho guy said it was perfect. Like there's no fracture in my collarbone at all. Like I hit exactly on the top of the joint, and basically your arm's held to your collarbone by 3 ligaments. Yep. And I sheared right through all 3 of those ligaments. So, so like your collarbone sticks up, like you can see it right through a t-shirt. Even it was like almost an inch, raised up, and
wow.
So are
you saying that was preferable to having broken your collarbone?
Well, the advantage to it, not preferable,
in relative terms,
advantage was I didn't need like surgery or anything. So no pins in the collarbone, nothing like that. But basically you have 2 choices with a grade 3 tear, because it's not a sprain or a partial tear. There's literally nothing holding your arm attached to your collarbone other than muscle and skin at that point. So you can either let it heal up naturally and it'll do what's called scarring up, and scar tissue will basically replace the ligaments, or they go in and they string a piece of wire around your collarbone and they just kind of cinch it up. So I decided to let it heal non-surgically. And the doc had told me, he said, look, you got 9 months. If at the end of 9 months it hasn't healed well, we can go in and we can do the surgery and do it that way. So basically you spend about 6 months holding your arm in your socket, and like you can't pick anything up, at all, because you'll tear all the scar tissue. So I lost probably close to, at that point, I was probably like 160, somewhere in there. Decent amount of muscle mass. I lost about 12 pounds of muscle mass. Wow. My whole right side atrophied, but I had done so much work to strengthen and build muscle that I healed completely and asymptomatically, and have absolutely no limitations now. And actually the doctor even was a little surprised at how well it healed. Yeah. And he said, you have years of prehab, and especially the resistance training, doing these complex lifts and everything. I had strengthened the shoulder. All the support muscles were balanced and in good shape. So my body was naturally trying to bring everything back into alignment, which gave me a better opportunity for it to scar up and heal right.
Cool. So it was sort of like a muscle memory in a way. Your body's trying to get back to its set point.
Yeah. And it took me, it was 2 years from the injury before I had regained everything that I had lost as far as strength and mobility and everything. But now, almost 7 years later, I'm doing everything I could do and more prior to the injury. Yeah. So, and I think what really struck me about just maintaining your, just exercise, fitness, lifting, all of those things you're putting money in the bank. These are investments that will pay dividends if and when something happens, and so many people, I was talking to him and he was showing me pictures and he said a lot of people don't recover well from this injury because they've been sedentary.
Sure.
So, so now they're trying to actually develop muscle to protect and help them overcome, the damage they did, but it's too late. It's like learning to defend yourself after you got mugged.
Right.
It doesn't help you very much.
Getting insurance after you don't need it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Have you ever seen the cross-sectional pictures of somebody's thigh as they get older? I don't know if you've ever seen something like that where
No.
You see the diameter of the thigh is the same, but the muscle area just shrinks and shrinks and shrinks because of the sarcopenia as you get older. Right. Mm-hmm. So it's just like you said, you basically waste away, especially if you start getting into your 50s and 60s. I mean, it's never too late to start strength training, but like you said, injury wise, the risk of not being able to recover goes up the older you are. Hey guys, I just wanted to thank you for listening to the podcast. If you find it valuable, you would be doing me a huge favor by sharing it on social media. Just take a screenshot, share it to your Instagram story or Facebook. Please tag me so I can personally thank you, and we can talk about what you found helpful and how I can improve. Again, an incredible thank you for supporting the podcast, and enjoy the rest of the episode.
And what's cool though is, from my understanding, your body responds really well. I mean, you can start lifting when you're in your 60s, and you're going to regain muscle mass, and and there's just this whole like kind of domino effect of benefits that come from that. The big thing is making sure that you're safe in doing it. Yeah, for sure. With doing the right form. My dad is in his 70s and has finally picked up weight training for the first time, and he's seen the benefits. I agree. You can build additional muscle even in your 70s. It's crazy. Yeah. And you're talking like and I know you've talked about on some of your episodes, the metabolic health of course, when
hormones,
when that
and testosterone and
and the just proportion of muscle to fat, the ratio. And I don't care what age you are, that is going to be good for you.
Oh, so, absolutely. Just having that higher metabolism for sure.
Yep.
All right. So let's see. OCR. I want to get back to that because you seem like a guy who's high energy, always has to be busy doing something, and you're trying to balance everything, not get injured. You want to live a long life, but you want to perform, you want to go out and win. So that sounds like a good outlet for that. Is that how you got into it?
Yeah. So it's kind of funny. And again, these things are so random. It was someone just asked me if I wanted to go do one of a Rugged Maniac, which was, and at that point, I wasn't really doing anything competitively. I had kind of retired from the cycling. I was doing it recreationally, but it just kind of ran its course, and I wasn't interested in continue to compete. I kind of took it to, as high an amateur level as I could. And it was just, I lost my interest in it. So I was kind of in between interesting athletic things to challenge myself that I hadn't already done. Went skydiving when I turned 50. That was fun, but it was an adrenaline kick, but it's not really a sport.
You would be a skydiver. Yeah.
It was, I loved it. I did it a few times. It was such a blast, but anyway, so they invited me to go do one of these Rugged Maniac things, and it was a blast. And the culture was very celebratory. It reminded me a little bit about how mountain biking was when I had done that, just the type of people that would show up. And, so I did it.
Let me stop you there. Did you do the one in Southwick?
Yes.
Okay. Cause I did that twice. It'd be interesting to know if we competed the same years. Was that like within the last 10 years, or was that much more recently?
Yes, I did it. Yeah. So I want to say the first year I did it was probably 2017, because it would have been, I wouldn't have been able to do it the year before that because I wasn't healed enough yet. I was less than a year off of my injury. So I think it was 2017. And I was really just at a point where I was starting to get back physically to the condition I was used to operating at.
That's a good way to test
that would have made
waters.
sense.
Yeah. It's a smaller race compared to like Tough Mudder or something like that.
Yeah. And of course, so I tried it. I had a blast. I think I went back, did it the next year. Yeah. So that would have been 2018, and started looking into the fact that they would do an elite heat. So which the first heat in the morning, you could actually have a timed race. You could compete in it. So I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Yeah. And of course I was going with a group of people and they weren't interested in that. So I ended up running the course in 2019 3 times. And I did it once competitively, did okay, like I didn't win or anything, but I did relatively well. And then I did it with a small group. And then I did it one more time with a big group, and just it was a lot of fun. So then,
just for the listener, this is a 5K with like 20 or 30 obstacles.
Yeah.
So a good time is somewhere in the upper 20s, maybe, or low 30s.
Low 30s.
Low 30s, right? Because
winning times were, depending on the course for the 5K, and how muddy it is that day, anywhere between 30 and 35 minutes.
Got it.
So the first year I did it competitively, I did it in about 38 minutes.
Okay.
So I did it well enough that it seemed like something that was interesting to pursue. And then of course, 2020, the pandemic. So it didn't happen at all. So last fall, so I kind of trained. I decided last fall in 2021, I was going to train for this thing and try to do well. So, and they actually have, competitively, they have a 50 and up division, and then they have just an all age division. So I ended up winning the 50 and up and finishing 3rd overall. So I got 2 medals.
Pretty cool. Congrats.
And, and it was fun, and it was, what I really enjoyed was the preparation, because the
process, I see.
The endurance part of it. So you got to be running, and I hadn't run. I'd been focusing on cycling. So it's kind of cool getting back to running. It's very pure. I love trail running. But then, you need a lot of body strength and a lot of body coordination because of all the obstacles. So I did that, placed high enough that I got an email about OCR World Championships, which happens every year. It's at Stratton this year. I was like, all right, why not?
Why not? Yeah.
So I decided I was going to train for that. And as part of that, I started researching the different OCR, like kind of circuits going around, and found Spartan racing, really liked, the way that looked. So signed up for Trifecta, which is basically doing the multiple distances. Worlds for OCR is a 15K race. So,
all right. So getting a little more hardcore here.
Yeah. More endurance. And the really fascinating thing about it is they give you a wristband. And if you don't clear an obstacle, they cut your wristband, you're done. So you can finish the race, but you're disqualified. So you've got to be able to clear all the obstacles. And you can try them more than once, like if you slip off or whatever. But
you can try them more. What's is that not the one where they make you do a bunch of burpees if you miss it, or is that like at the non-competitive level? Oh, that is Spartan.
Yeah, okay. Spartan does that.
Like 30 burpees or something.
Yeah, 25 burpees.
25. Yep. Okay.
So if you miss an obstacle, you got to go to the penalty box. And they actually, for the competitive, you can do Spartan just recreationally, but if you're, the preparation and how it relates to this idea of being an integrated athlete, that's really been my kind of focus off of all of it. So,
So let's talk about the terms here, right? You've used the terms functional strength, integrated movement, integrated athlete. The first time I came across functional movement was CrossFit again, back in the day, where I got introduced to barbells and power cleans and such. I guess, in your words, what does that mean? What does functional strength mean to you?
So for me, and I mean, there's a lot of different ways that people think of it, but for me, it's being able to do the things that I love to do to live the life of my choosing. So, and for some people that could be hiking with their grandkids, or being able to go to a water park and actually go down the slides and climb up the stairs. It could be being able to do yard work in your 90s. It's just, to me, the preparation for athletic events for me has always been in service to being able to do the things that I want to do not only physically, but mentally and emotionally, keeping, my energy levels stay strong. My mind is clear. I'm on zero medications. It's just, I stay healthy. I get to live the life that I want to live. So, so to me, when I think functional strength, it's like even this, this OCR stuff, it's you're pushing, you're pulling, you're crawling, you're climbing, you're doing like actual movements that, show up in your life. I mean, it's funny. One of the things I would tell people in martial arts is the one skill I guarantee you will use that you'll learn in a martial arts class is how to fall safely. At some point, you're going to fall down, and most people, that's how they, especially as they age, you break a bone, you dislocate a hip, you get hurt because, two things. Number one, falling is a skill that you can develop. Yep. Let me down when I blew out my AC, but hey, no, there's no guarantees, right? But then the other thing is, how well have you practiced your body being functionally sound and structurally sound so that it has a higher tolerance for the unexpected things that happen in our lives, and if something does go wrong, you can recover from it better on the other side. So.
Yeah. And it seems like there's a spectrum because, for example, if someone were to come to me and say, I want to get stronger, I'd say, all right, we're going to start with the very basics, right? We're going to squat, we're going to deadlift, because squatting is bending down, right? Like you would do if you were outside with your tribe or whatever. Deadlifting is picking stuff up, overhead pressing is reaching over your head. And bench pressing is kind of the odd man out, even though we all love it, but it's kind of pushing, being able to push something heavy forward in a way. So those are functional movements and they develop stability, mobility, etc. But you are still lacking some, like I couldn't do a backflip and I haven't really learned to fall properly. So things like that would expand the repertoire, I guess, if I, focused on those skills. So it's an interesting perspective.
Yeah. Like we went to a trampoline park and I'm out there literally doing backflips and bouncing all over the place, like I'm a teenager. Yeah. And, and I'm not sore from it the next day. Like I trained trampolining as part of diving and you would not believe how sore you can get if you're not used to doing, sure. So, but yeah, so it's just, for me, it's that. And, and this idea of being an integrated athlete is actually kind of these 5 components. We talk about move, think, connect, fuel, and power, with the idea being every day, make an investment in your ability to move somehow, every day do something that's good for your mind, and learn something new, read something, listen to something, and get the blood going, get the blood into your brain, oxygenate your brain so the movement helps with that. Fuel is obviously the nutrition, the nourishment you bring in. Connect is the relationships that you form through all of this, So, I mean, going for a walk with a partner or a friend, it's powerful on a lot of different levels, and then through the martial arts, I do a lot of Qigong meditation, mindfulness stuff. So empower is just, being present in whatever it is you're doing. And when you do all those things a little bit every day, it kind of, for me anyway, it helps keep everything in balance. So you don't get caught up in lifting for the sake of lifting. You're lifting for a purpose that adds value to your life over the long term. And if your body changes or your environment changes or something changes professionally, you don't feel like you're losing something because it will just adapt to the needs that you now have. And it will grow and evolve with you over time instead of, I used to be able to run a mile in 5:15. I can't do that anymore.
Sure.
Does that mean I shouldn't be running?
Right. Yeah. No, I like that. I like where you're going with that too. You have to have a goal and you could have intermediate goals. You could have long-term goals, right? And then you break it down to the process. Don't give up either extreme. In other words, like you said, don't just do the process for its own sake, because then eventually you might not have purpose, and don't just focus on the end goal thinking that's all there is. So that's a good balance. What would you say to people who are listening who either want to get started in what you do, maybe with the martial arts, or somebody who's not as active because you threw out a bunch of things, right? And you developed these over time, but what are the big priorities, the big rocks for people?
I think honestly, the very first thing is understanding the value of recovery. I, I think you almost have to start there. Sleep, understanding how much
Sleep.
sleep you
Yep.
need. I'm like a geek when it comes to the technology. So like I use Whoop, which
Is that the mattress or is that the device on your wrist?
that's the device.
Oh, that's the
could
one
be on
up
your
there.
arm or your
Okay.
wrist. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it
You got the
basically
Aura ring.
yeah, yep, the
Yeah.
same thing. Yep,
Yeah.
or is the exact same, well, different company, but same thing, and it helps you understand how well, based on the effort you put in, how well you're sleeping and recovering based on that. Understanding hydration needs and understanding the nourishment of the food you bring in, and how it's really just, it's, I think the confusion I see in a lot of people that I've worked with over the years is they get caught up in the output. And
Mhm.
I need to do my 10,000 steps, or I need to get to the gym 3 days a week. And yes, there is all of that, but that's just stimulation. That you have to create the space in your life to receive the benefit.
Mhm.
And and sometimes the best thing to do is stop. Like I definitely I go off of everything. I do like little supplementation like creatine and
Sure.
omegas, stuff like that. But I stop everything, stop lifting, and just walk for a week
Yeah.
and just stop.
Take a,
all
which
the things,
you could say it's a deload, but you really just unplug and disconnect and let your body fully recover.
Yeah. And I'm actually thinking about that. I'm thinking about muscle repairing and how much better I'm going to feel on the other side of it, and that kind of thing. So, so that's the first thing. And then the second thing, that I always recommend to people is find movements that you enjoy. So because that's the first thing. If you're doing something that makes you, and you hate it every time you think about doing it,
you're not going to do it.
You're not going to stay with it. So you got to find things that you. Now, yes, there's effort. And exercise isn't always fun. I remember an adult saying to me a few years ago, he's like, "You saying I'm going to have to do this for the rest of my life?" And I'm like, "Yep." If you want to be healthy, you could stop. But what's the so
you've got to do your squats, right?
No
exactly. You got to do them. But maybe you don't want to do back squats. Maybe you want to do front squats. Maybe you want to do it with a dumbbell, whatever, leg press. Do something.
Right? Yeah. Maybe it's resistance bands. Or maybe it's putting your kid on your back and doing squats with them, doing piggybacks. Or just grab a dumbbell, walk up and down stairs. The asymmetric farmers carries, those are great. So so how
there's basically no excuse is what you're getting at. It's like, if you don't like something, you find something you do like. At the end of the day, it's going to be hard at some point, right? And that's part of the fun, really, is when you do hard things and you see the results. It can be fun itself.
Well, and you're looking forward to the result. So while you're engaged in the activity, you're thinking about the value you're creating, and what that means to you. And I think I've been fortunate in that, like physically, what it does to me has been symptomatic. So like, how ripped my abs are isn't the reason I work out.
Sure.
It's just something that you notice as you're going through the training cycles and, my body composition. I weigh myself every day and use an impedance scale just so that I can kind of monitor how I'm doing.
Yep.
And, but I'm not obsessed with how I look. I'm just thinking about the value I'm creating. So
I agree. Like if for nutrition coaching, I talk about using biofeedback and data and measurements is just that, just data. It's, in fact, when you do it regularly, if you weigh yourself every day, you almost stop thinking about it and you stop obsessing about it. But it's easier said than done, because people have, there's all sorts of emotional, mental issues people have, and there's disordered eating and things like that. But I love where you're going.
That's hard too. Yeah. Oh, sorry. I was just thinking that could be so hard. Like, especially when I've worked with younger people, they're on Instagram and they're seeing all those visuals are kind of hitting them. And it's really hard to balance that, against doing what's best for you and not getting caught up in, these kind of unrealistic images or, whatever,
sure.
Or maybe they are realistic, but if it becomes an end in and of itself, it's all very impermanent. Anything you win, any medals you get, any picture you take, you're not going to look or be able to do that
it's a new world with,
now anyway.
with social media. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah.
This is all great stuff, man. I mean, recovery and, food and fuel and finding something that you like, for sure. Is there anything else you want to share with the listener before I wrap it up?
Yeah, I think the last thing that's been helpful is understanding how to lower resistance environmentally. And one of the things I'll help people with is we call it the swapping grid. We look at because a lot of people, I think they're thinking they have to add more, do more. I've got to now get up an hour earlier to get into the gym. And their approach is something that can lead to being out of balance because you're trying to find more time. And especially if you're
adding stressors by trying to do
exactly,
better. Yeah.
Exactly. Sure. So we talk about looking for things that you already have built into your life that maybe aren't serving you and then swapping them out. So a simple example could be like one I've had a lot of people have success with is they're trying to cut down on like soda nutritionally because it's just a lot of junk carbs and not good for them. So either they stop buying it or they put it in the back of the fridge and they put a pitcher of water in front of it. So you're just trading out the choice to drink the soda for drinking water. And sometimes you'll do that, sometimes you won't, but a lot of them will find that pretty quickly they've reduced their intake by 50%. Right. And that has all kinds of residual effects they can experience. So, so maybe you're tired at the end of the day and you like to decompress with half hour of Netflix and, you just go for a walk instead, or maybe you find like a podcast that you like and you listen to it and walk. So it's how can I find time that's already there and reclaim it by swapping out something that fits with my long-term goals instead of just these habituated patterns that are just kind of there that I don't even think about anymore. And
I like that. I like that, Ken. Yeah. That reminds me of, I don't know if it was a Freakonomics episode years ago, talked about, I think it was Angela Duckworth, maybe about the habits.
I love that show.
And it was sort of rewarding yourself by doing the activity. And the example they gave was being on a treadmill while watching Netflix. Like I only allow myself to watch Netflix while I'm on a treadmill, and sort of you're leveraging that same time, but now you're doing something.
Yep.
I got a treadmill to work with now that I work from home mostly for that same reason. Like, well, I got to get my steps in, and I will go for a walk, but I can't walk all day. So I can walk all day now while I'm working,
Yep. Yeah. And you find ways. And I've done that for years. Like audiobooks have been my best friend because I can do them while I'm doing cardio, so whether I'm on a run or a bike ride. So I'm nourishing my mind at the same time that I'm training my body, and it's helped me reach my goals for how many books I want to read each year and, stimulate the brain. So, and it's interesting having talked to a lot of people, they once you point it out to them, they come up with these amazing like solutions for their own lives. They just hadn't thought about it. They just needed someone to say, hey, have you thought about this? And then they're like, no. And then they do. And it's like really cool. I've had some people tell me some really wild things that they've done that, not only added to their own physical well-being, but improved relationships. Like, all of a sudden they're doing things with their kids, when they never felt like they had enough time. And then they found this new solution that's better for everyone.
Absolutely.
So that's the other thing that's been really helpful.
That's awesome, Ken. All right. Well, very cool stuff. Where can listeners learn more about you or your work?
My goodness. So I'm doing a lot of projects right now, but nothing really, I think that would be of much interest to anyone. That will probably change in a few months.
Okay.
If they wanted to contact me, email is probably the simplest thing to do. And that's just ken@questersway.com.
Okay. Ken at questersway.com. I'll put it in the show notes. Sure.
Yeah. And that's Quester's Way is it's actually a business we created, ran for 4 years, and now we're ready to relaunch it post-pandemic here. That it's basically an entire center built around this idea of move, think, connect, fuel, and power.
Very exciting. Stephanie's told me all about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a really cool, project. So, but right now, I just kind of, I work with different people on different things. We're going to be working with actually the UConn football team this summer, helping them out a little bit.
Oh, that's amazing. What are you doing with them?
Yeah, a combination of things, but a lot of it's going to be helping their defensive and offensive linemen with getting a little bit more of a competitive advantage, especially with the way they use their hands and just where their head's at before the snap of the ball. So, cool. So this could be a lot of fun. We're looking forward to working with them.
So we're going to see them in the top 10 before long, huh?
Oh boy, that would be really cool. I'm sure they would love that. They've been struggling for a few years, but they've got a new head coach now, and they're making some pretty significant changes. Like even just they redid the whole locker room, and it's like amazing. They gave us a cool tour.
They could attract some better recruits. But hey, what you're doing with them, could have a big difference. You never know. So
and that's exactly it. So so they reached out, and we had a little conversation with them, and there are some ways that we could kind of apply some of the principles that we've learned over time to help them out. So so that's what I kind of do, but it's nothing super formal. I'm kind of at a place of picking and choosing projects and who I work with and stuff like that. So
awesome. Well, Ken, thanks for coming on the show. It was really cool talking with you. Learned a lot of really neat stuff here today. So thanks again.
I've been learning a lot. I've been following your podcast, and it's just been super helpful. Really good information.
Oh man, great to hear.
Keep it up.
If there's anything you want to hear on there, you think I should talk about, let me know. Or anybody who wants to come on, let me know. So great talking to you, Ken. All right,
Take care.
Take it easy. Thank you so much for joining me today. Before you go, I do have a quick favor to ask. If you enjoy the podcast, just let me know by leaving a review in Apple Podcasts. This will help others find the podcast in search results, which makes a huge difference. Thanks again for joining me, your host, Philip Pape, in this episode of Wits and Weights. I'll see you next time, and stay strong.